Hello, I'm Anita Hollinshead and I'm the Regional Collections Advisor for Museum Development East Midlands, and I'm going to do a short presentation on caring for your collections during lockdown. This presentation is supported by two documents that are also on the Museum Development East Midlands website. Those are resources of further information which gives links to all the documents and things that I'll mention during this presentation, and lots of additional information to sort of build on. There's also a museum site visit template checklist that we've developed in partnership with museum development colleagues from across the country and Collections Trust, and that's very much for you to adapt to meet your own needs. So just going to move on to my slides. So the first thing to mention is very important at this time to be realistic and pragmatic about what you actually can achieve in terms of looking after your collections. This is an unprecedented incident, and it's very important to put your own health and well-being first. So we'll now move on to our first slide about how to prepare for closing a museum building and leaving your collections. This might be for quite a long period of time, or it might be just between weekly or monthly visits. So turning off your electrical equipment, don't turn it off if it's things like your heating, you're trying to maintain a stable environment that way, if it's linked to your alarm systems or your environmental monitoring, or your dehumidifier if you're going to leave that on. If you are going to leave it on, do think about how that might be emptied. Turning off water only if you don't need it, if it's not running your heating system. If you can turn off the water, it will prevent issues around leaking taps and leaking pipes and so on. If you are going to leave your water on and you are going in to do checks, it's a good idea to run taps and flush toilets during those visits, just to mitigate the risk of Legionnaires' disease. In terms of arson, trying not to leave rubbish. Looking at the outside of your building, is there anything that could be set alight that's kind of quite close to the building? Maybe some rubbish. Are inflammable materials locked away in fireproof cabinets? Don't leave anything behind that might act as food for pests. So emptying bins. If you are going to leave biscuits, tea bags and things behind because you're going to go in and use the offices, make sure they're in sealed containers so that insect pests and rodents can't get to them. If you don't need to leave your fridge on, if you haven't got a freezer compartment with things like natural history specimens in, which some museums do have, switch it off, empty it, switch it off and leave the door open. Do that kind of usual check of the exterior of the building. You're looking for signs of damage and you're looking for signs that there might have been a breach of security, there might have been a break-in or some vandalism. But you're also just sort of checking the exterior of the building to make sure that there isn't anything that could cause a problem while you're away. In terms of security, you're also looking at whether your cases and drawers are all locked, anywhere where you might have collections stored, your alarms and CCTV working, and are your keys in a safe place and who has access to them. Any changes that you make, you should inform your insurers about as well. Make a record of anything that you do so that you've got that for your insurance company later on. Where you've got collections on open display or storage, cover them up with Tyvek or acid-free tissue. If there's a risk of water ingress near those collections or leaks and drips, cover them with tissue and then with some polythene. But don't put the polythene directly onto the collections because that can cause compensation. Contact any contractors like security, maintenance or cleaning, update them about what's happening and decide whether they will continue to come in and can do their activities safely. You might also want to update your local fire and rescue team and your community police officer if that's somebody that you liaise with regularly about the current situation. In terms of loans, contact the lender, update them on your situation, reassure them about security and environmental conditions, and take a photographic record so that that's for sort of reassuring them and for your own kind of peace of mind. You can see that the condition of that item has not changed during the time that you've been locked down. In terms of your own collections that you've lent out, again, contact the borrower and make those same sort of checks. And also, if you've maybe got things off site for conservation, just contact the conservator and check that everything's okay. Update your insurers about changes in circumstances and potentially changes of contacts, because some of your staff or volunteers may either be isolating or furloughed. Update your risk assessments. Look at the key risks to your collections during this time. Those are likely to be poor environmental conditions, pests and security breaches. Update your risk assessments and look at how you might move some of your resources into dealing with those risks. And review your emergency plan. Some of the people on that list of contacts on your emergency plan, again, may be furloughed or isolating, so you need to update that. If you're talking about getting PPE and hiring equipment at the time that emergency occurs, you're still going to be able to do that in the current situation, and do you need to make mitigating sort of actions for that? Do you have a section on being closed for a considerable period of time? Just looking at what alternatives are available to things that would have been in your plan under normal circumstances. If you're actually to be able to fairly regularly visit and undertake security and environmental condition checks, a couple of things to think about, should you be doing that. This is very helpful guidance on the Arts Council website and DCMS, that actually, yes, you can be permitted to provide security or ensure the preservation of cultural objects and travel to that place of work. So I put the link for that there. Also, if you need a referral letter saying that you are a key worker undertaking this activity, then there is a really helpful template that you can adapt to meet your own needs on the Museum Gallery Scotland website. If you can go in, you should also, first of all, get permission from your governing body. People should know that you're on site and they should know why. And this is where I think the checklist is quite helpful, because you can actually say these are the activities that we'll be undertaking while we're on site. Have up-to-date risk assessments and insurance, loan working procedures. Very good idea to contact someone before you go in, perhaps regularly update them by text or phone while you're on site, and then to let them know when you've left again. And PPE, so gloves and masks, are very minimum while you're on site. It's just flagging up that guidance I previously mentioned. Remind you that you can't work for your employer if you've been furloughed. To take your checklist and your recording equipment and tools. Really important, take your phone. Most phones now have cameras on them, so you can record what you see. Take tools like screwdrivers and scissors and a scale or ruler. If you're taking photographs, it's really helpful to have a scale, particularly if you're looking at things like mould. Find a patch of mould in your store, you can take a photo with a scale. You can monitor over the weeks if that's actually increasing or not. So those are the kind of things to think about. And then, what are you actually going to? What are the priorities to check on when you're actually visiting the site? So, in terms of pest activity, you're potentially going to have limited time on site. You might have a whole day, but you might only have an hour or two. So you do need to prioritise and do that before you go in, so you make the most of the time you have. In terms of pest activity, look at your vulnerable collections. You may already be aware of pest activity that has happened in previous years. Pests are quite habitual, so if you've had problems in the past, you're probably going to continue to. And also, so there's less disturbance for pests when we're closed. So look at your vulnerable things like wool and silk and natural history material as a priority. Make sure you've removed any food or rubbish, that you've got good housekeeping procedures, so you're not creating sort of areas of safe harbourage for pests. Check your traps and change them. Some museums are taking their traps home to check them. Others are photographing them so that they can analyse the results at home. These are two things that will save you a bit of time when you're on site. If you see any signs of infestation on collections, then quarantine those items. And look at your previous records, the patterns activity in the past, and don't forget to look for rodents as well as insect pests, so dropping, signs that things have been chewed and so on, and holes around doors and windows where they might be getting in. In terms of environmental monitoring, you're really looking for fluctuations in temperature and humidity that can particularly be damaging to organic materials. So try and maintain a stable environment as you can, keeping heating on if that's possible. Check your monitors and data loggers to see what's actually happening. Check your dehumidifiers and empty them if necessary. You might need to recondition silica gel. You might need to change pro-sorb containers in cases. So, but what you're really looking for are those big fluctuations that might be causing some real issues in some of your collections. Also, you're looking at signs of damage, cracking and splitting of materials. Evidence of mould growth, so as saying, take photographs with a scale so you can analyse what's really happening, check that out. In terms of light and dust, they're both things you don't want to be falling on your collections. So in terms of light, very damaging to particular types of material, and dust, it's food for pests, and it's also quite acidic, can cause damage to the surface of objects. So anything that's on open storage or open display, cover it. You might consider taking things off display and putting them into your store for the time that you're closed. Any movement of materials, make sure that you record that so that other people don't go in and think something's been stolen. So record it, both document it and take photographs. And what you're covering things with should be acid-free tissue or Tyvek, ideally. You'll be aware of known issues with your buildings where you've got particular problems, but check things like open fireplaces for ingress of water and birds' nests, damage to roofs, and moving on to and gutters and things like that might cause problems with flooding. But also you're looking at security, so signs that someone might have broken in, or doors and windows that don't look very secure that you need to get fixed at this time. We're seeing evidence of smaller sort of acts of opportunistic sort of break-ins and vandalism at this time. So it's being sort of doing all the best we can to prevent that or avoid it. And collections condition checks. So you want to be doing a regular check of things that are collections that are high or medium risk if possible, ideally undertaken by colleagues with training in collections care. If that's not possible, it's about providing some sort of checklist for maybe colleagues who are usually working on security, gardeners who are going in some sites, or front of house staff who might not normally do this kind of work, just a sort of checklist of things to look for. What's great is that somebody who's doing those checks can take in a phone, they can take photographs, they could even use Skype or FaceTime and share what they're looking at with you while they're doing that. So those are the things that we might be looking at on the side. This just refers to the checklist that we've developed and that is now on our website. The idea is very much that you adapt this to meet your own needs. So I'm just showing you one of the pages from that at the moment. There's an opening as a front page that tells you how to use the checklist, and then it goes through all the different types of activity, starting with a check of the perimeter of your building and buildings in the plural, where that's so that everything that gives you the information you need to fill in other parts of that checklist. This is also a document that's really useful. It's free to download from the Museum Gallery Scotland website, and it's a security checklist looking at your buildings. Again, you might just want to adapt that to meet your own needs. If you can't get in at all, but other people can, then it's thinking about how you explain priority tasks to them, what resources they might need to do that, and what you can access remotely. So this is very much where things like your phone and those sort of communications can really come to the fore. This can also be seen very much as an opportunity to do some behind the scenes tasks. What you can do depends really on what you can access, whether you can get on site or things you can do remotely, or what resources you have on your computers that you've got at home. If you've already done a benchmarks and collections care assessment, you can review it, or it's a good thing to do for the first time, free to download from the Collections Trust website. A lot of museums are getting on with some behind the scenes documentation, marking and labelling of objects. Several really good films on the Share Museum East website on how to mark and label specific collections. A lot of people are looking at updating their plans and policies for accreditation. You can consider repacking your collections if you've got materials. Some of the companies like Preservation Equipment had suspended deliveries last time I looked, but that I'm sure that's going to be a fluid situation, so have a look at that. Housekeeping and cleaning, again, lots of useful information to help you with that, but on the South West Museum Development website there are a couple of films about how to dry clean and wet clean artefacts, so I recommend having a look at those about. Creating digital resources, trying to engage people with your collections and your heritage while you're closed, so that you're engaging your audience but in a different way. Lots of lovely examples of that kind of activity going on, and the Museum of London on their website have a very useful list of examples of good practice, and that's growing all the time, and we're collecting examples in East Midlands at the moment to put on our website. You can analyse your environmental monitoring data. You can commission conservation work. Most conservators are self-employed and working at home, and will be still able to undertake some conservation work, which you might be able to share with your audience through updates and blogs and online activity. So consider doing that as well, and then those objects can go on display when you reopen. And thinking about reopening and how that might look, what you'll do when you get back on site. Useful article on the Museum Association website at the moment about the things we'll need to consider, because it's going to look very different from how we used to open beforehand, and it's going to be a period of kind of phased reopening. And finally, we're thinking about how we might prepare for this sort of scenario in the future. What have we learned? What would have made it easier to have done our lockdown and to have started working from home, or working at limited office hours? What systems would have helped us? So probably thinking about having environmental monitoring systems you can access remotely, thinking about how you might maintain the environment and work with your contractors in the future, how you might adapt your emergency plan. Making sure that your digital museum is fit for purpose, and that's about how you can use that to create resources and continue to engage people while you're closed, and that's the same for social media. What resources would it have been really helpful to have in place that you had access to when you were working at home? What can volunteers be doing while you're closed so that they continue to be part of your museum while we can't actually be open and operating as a site open to the public? What sort of training resources would have been useful for those people who perhaps never worked with collections before and are suddenly the ones who are going in to check on their condition, and backups for your documentation? And I think that question about if you knew this was going to happen again, what would really help? And would you make plans to move some collection items off site? It's worth thinking about that at the moment while you might have a bit of time to do that. And then our final thoughts. There's a final point about just sort of looking after yourself at this time, not putting too much pressure on yourself to be able to do everything as you would in normal circumstances. This is a sort of unprecedented experience for all of us in terms of caring for our collections. We have to be pragmatic, do the best we can, but not get completely overwhelmed by the stress of that. And also, we're all dealing with work, but it's compounded by having to deal with quite a different domestic situation too. For those people who are homeschooling, who have carer responsibilities, there's all sorts of other things going on whilst we're still sort of trying to carry on and care for our collection. So be kind to yourselves at this time. Museum Development East Midlands, we're all here as a team to support people. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us with any inquiries or concerns, and we'll do our best to be able to help, or if you just need to have a chat. And network with colleagues. We're doing quite a lot of online training at this time, and that's an opportunity to see remotely, to see on Zoom your colleagues and from other sites, and just share the experience. And it's interesting how much sharing of experience and concerns is going on in those training sessions. So please do keep in touch, and good luck, and we'll